Mr. President, in January, you had my vote. Since then, I wouldn't be too sure. For the rest of us, let's talk the president's Mount Rushmore speech and how the president needs to step up and put his money where his mouth is. All that and more on today's show. This is the Life Given Podcast. I'm Isaac Lopez. I hope you all had a fantastically independent 4th and 4th of July weekend. I know that a lot of the celebrations were canceled, unfortunately, but I think that on Saturday we found out just the state of the country, how everyone is restless and how everyone is sick of being locked up and locked down. So in today's show, I just want to look at the July 3rd presidential speech that President Trump gave at Mount Rushmore on celebrating the 4th of July. And I think that there's, before we get to it, I just want to offer a few general thoughts. The first is that I think that this is his best speech. Personally, I think he got away from what we can call Trumpisms, what we can call his vanity, his vainglory, how he really used superlatives all the time in his speech. He really got away from those and gave a very good speech. And I think that's exactly what his base needed to hear and what America needed to hear. And it really could not have come at a better time. We'll get more into this, but like I said in the introduction, I think that he's lost many people's votes in the last 5 months of his presidency. Up until then, the economy was booming. He was making good decisions. He was being strong, and yet he ran when he became president, and when he was running to become president, he ran on law and order and draining the swamp. We haven't really seen either of those two being done in the last 5 months. He's actually seemed to pander to the swamp, and he's done nothing but stand by and watch statues being torn down and police buildings and buildings across the nation going up in flames. Where is the law and order, and where was the swamp being drained, whether in DC or across the nation? A lot of things have not been fixed that he promised to fix, and that has become very evident in these first 6 months of 2020. So he comes up, he begins a speech on Mount Rushmore. I went back and watched it. I've seen it a couple times now in preparation for the show, and I would recommend that you watch it in full. Today, I just want to show a few clips and discuss them, some of the highlights from his speech. And for the audio listener, it shouldn't be any different, but the visual aid is nice to see him be, I think, the most presidential that I have yet seen him be. So, a couple other comments before we jump in here. I think that his talk came at a very good time. His timing could not really his time was running out on making a speech like this and on taking action. So I think that we've seen the 4th of July was a great metric for what the American people are feeling at the moment. If you look at aerial footage of news footage of the fireworks show in LA, it's very impressive. In LA, it was, and like in most parts of the country, a lot of July 4th celebrations were being canceled or had been canceled, and yet people went out of their way to celebrate. And I think that shows just how much really Americans love America. And we'll get to that at the end of the show. I want to make more of a point about that. But really, the freedom that we experience here is like no other. And I think people recognize that, even though they're being told quite the opposite. And Trump points that out in his speech. So he is speaking to a nation and an audience that wants to hear him say this. For so long, they've had a very quiet and demure president. That's not the president we voted into the White House. That's not the president that has been leading this country for the last 3 years. So we've wondered, and with good cause, where has President Trump been all this time? And so finally, it sounds like he may be coming out and starting to actually live up to what he promised. And I am only praying for just that. Just in conclusion, before we jump here into the actual video and audio clips, it's time for him to put his money where his mouth's at, because he can make as many speeches as he wants, but now he needs to take some action, and we need to see some people being arrested, and we need to see some justice being served throughout the land, and for him to actually start living up to what he promised to America when he was elected into office. So here you go. I think this may be one of his best speeches yet. It's about 45 minutes long. It's very moving. For the first 30 minutes, you do not get Trumpisms. You get a president that is leading in a time where people so desperately need a leader. Here you go.
I am here as your president to proclaim before the country and before the world, this monument will never be desecrated. These heroes will never be defaced. Their legacy will never, ever be destroyed. Their achievements will never be forgotten. And Mount Rushmore will stand forever as an eternal tribute to our forefathers and to our freedom.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pause it right here, and for the audio listener that can't see the picture, he's giving this speech in front of Mount Rushmore. He's promising that these will not come down in a time where statues, some of these presidents that are that are carved into the side of this mountain, have already been thrown down. And so finally he's coming in and promising what he promised at the beginning of his election, the beginning of his candidacy, to promote law and order throughout the land, to not let this kind of crap happen. And we've seen more and more of it happening because he has not stood up and done what he said that he was going to do. So it's good to finally hear him say that, and he's actually started to arrest people, as he mentions in this speech. And it's about dang time. So this next clip is a couple minutes long, so just buckle up here. But this is kind of the way the show is going to go. In this clip, in this next one that we're going to look at and listen to, we see President Trump have a great beat on what is going on in the country here. And he's going to call out people that I think America needs to hear this. America needs to realize who the enemy is and who we're pushing back against in this time. So here we go for a couple minutes. Just watch as President Trump finally calls out who is actually who's actually pushing this movement and pushing this message.
One of their political weapons is cancel culture, driving people from their jobs, shaming dissenters, and demanding total submission from anyone who disagrees. This is the very definition of totalitarianism. And it is completely alien to our culture and to our values, and it has absolutely no place in the United States of America. This attack on our liberty, our magnificent liberty, must be stopped, and it will be stopped very quickly. We will expose this dangerous movement, protect our nation's children, end this radical assault, and preserve our beloved American way of life. In our schools, our newsrooms, even our corporate boardrooms, there is a new far-left fascism that demands absolute allegiance. If you do not speak its language, perform its rituals, recite its mantras, and follow its commandments, then you will be censored, banished, blacklisted, persecuted, and punished. It's not going to happen to us. Make no mistake, this left-wing cultural revolution is designed to overthrow the American Revolution. In so doing, they would destroy the very civilization that rescued billions from poverty, disease, violence, and hunger, and that lifted humanity to new heights of achievement, discovery, and progress. To make this possible, they are determined to tear down every statue, symbol, and memory of our national heritage.
That person from the crowd just said, "Not on my watch."
That's very true, actually. That is why I am deploying federal law enforcement to protect our monuments, arrest the rioters, and prosecute offenders to the fullest extent of the law.
People want to hear this. It's what they need to hear. They just tell from the crowd reaction right there. Granted, it's a pro-Trump crowd. Chanting 4 more years.
I am pleased to report that yesterday, federal agents arrested the suspected ringleader of the...
All right, so right here, I just want to point out that he got to the root of the issue. This is not just about statues, okay? This is kind of going back to my take on masks on Friday. I realize not many people may like to hear that, and I think that it's really easy to just get caught up in like how minute of a problem it might be. But this is about more than just wearing a mask or tearing down statues. This right here, I don't want to get sidetracked on the mask issue and COVID. Right here with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the protesters and what the rioters are doing, this is not about statues. This is about rewriting history and trying to completely change what America is all about. So don't get it twisted on that. And I think President Trump lays out very well in this speech. And that's exactly what people need to know, that he knows where the issue is. And it's not just rioters rioting in the streets, just some rednecks that are out there having a good time. Although it's definitely not rednecks. Rednecks are more on his side. Anyway, moving on to the next clip here. He in this next clip, he really gets at the issue and kind of where these problems started. And this is honestly why I was glad I was homeschooled. Here it is.
We have seen in the streets and cities that are run by liberal Democrats in every case is the predictable result of years of extreme indoctrination and bias in education, journalism, and other cultural institutions. Against every law of society and nature, our children are taught in school to hate their own country and to believe that the men and women who built it were not heroes, but that were villains. The radical view of American history is a web of lies. All perspective is removed, every virtue is obscured, every motive is twisted, every fact is distorted, and every flaw is magnified until the history is purged and the record is disfigured beyond all recognition. This movement is openly attacking the legacies of every person on Mount Rushmore. They defile the memory of Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt. Today, we will set history and history's records straight.
A point that I would like to make here is that the men that are on Mount Rushmore, that are carved into the side of that mountain. They were great. Don't let that become twisted in your minds. They were great Christian leaders that helped establish this nation and made it a nation that I think a Christian should be proud to live in. And we'll close with those thoughts in a few moments here after another clip. But realize that just because slavery was still alive and well in the United States, that does not negate what these men were able to do. And because of what they were able to do, we were able to eventually end slavery and be a nation that led the charge in abolishing slavery completely. Before we start pointing fingers at the founding fathers for how they held slaves and held men captive, we should maybe examine our own times and look at how abortion is rampant in our own day without really any pushback, without really the correction that I think that this country really needs. And I think we're starting to face the judgment for killing innocent children. This last clip I want to play for you. President Trump realizes what really makes this country work. And here it is.
The truth in full, without apology. We declare that the United States of America is the most just and exceptional nation ever to exist on earth. We are proud of the fact that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and we understand that these values have dramatically advanced the cause of peace and justice throughout the world. We know that the American family is the bedrock of American life. We recognize the solemn right and moral duty of every nation to secure its borders. And we are building the wall. We remember that governments exist to protect the safety and happiness of their own people. A nation must care for its own citizens first. We must take care of America first. It's time. We believe in equal opportunity, equal justice, and equal treatment for citizens of every race, background, religion, and creed. Every child of every color, born and unborn, is made in the holy image of God.
Amen. Now do something about that. Some pandering right here.
We want free and open debate, not speech codes and cancel culture. We embrace tolerance, not prejudice. We support the courageous men and women of law enforcement.
Need to hear that for the last few weeks.
We will never abolish our police or our great Second Amendment, which gives us the right to keep and bear arms. We believe that our children should be taught to love their country, honor their history, and respect our great American flag. We stand tall, we stand proud, and we only kneel to Almighty God.
Amen.
This is who we are. This is what we believe. And these are the values that will guide us as we strive to build an even better and greater future.
So I think mixed throughout the speech is a lot of patriotism. There's some pandering to his base, but there's a lot of truth in what he says in this 45-minute speech. Obviously, I'll link to it in the show notes below. But I think this is a good time to remember why Christians should be proud of the United States of America and why they shouldn't feel ashamed to be patriotic of the country that they live in. Because it truly is, and President Trump says it pretty well there, that this has been, this was the great American experiment. Would this succeed when we broke from the United Kingdom, from Britain? And it really worked. And I think it was the culmination of Western civilization, or I think a building on it. I think that America, that the United States can definitely improve in many areas. But the form of government that we have is based off of the kind of people that inhabit its land. We are not ruled by a king or by a queen. We are we are governed rather by people that we put there, by people that we elected and put there. Whatever form of government it is, this, I think, is one of the best that mankind has ever offered. I think that is because, like President Trump said there in the last clip, it is based off of Judeo-Christian values. It is based off of the Christian principles that we have seen building over the last 2,000 years. And so I think though that is one big reason for why so many people should be proud of this country and why the 4th of July is such an important holiday to celebrate and to realize when you look at the fascism that is arising now, the kind of Marxism that we are seeing throughout our country, that it is important to realize which one is the better one to pick. And I think that without a doubt, it is the values and principles we have seen in this country for the last 244 years, obviously with some exceptions like slavery. And that's why we changed and fixed that, right? That's why we fought a civil war that cost 600,000 men their lives. So just think about, I think that that's something that, and that I've come to be very proud of this country because of what we've accomplished so far in it. And obviously we need to be making it better, but on the road to making it better, we cannot tear it completely apart. Because if we do that, we are going to jump way back in time and we're going to lose a lot of ground that we have gained if we give in to the demands of the left or the demands of this movement that we have been seeing throughout this nation. So it's time to wake up. It's time to be proud of where you're born, be proud of the country that you live in, because there are things that you should definitely be proud of and not ashamed of. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed today's show. If you have enjoyed today's show, and if you want to make the Life Given podcast part of your weekly routine, your daily routine, we are going to have shows Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We kicked it off at the beginning of July last Wednesday. And if you have enjoyed it, if you want to make it part of your routine, subscribe to it on whatever platform you are on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I myself am a huge Spotify user and listen to so many podcasts on there. So it's nice when I hit subscribe, I will see it pop up on there on my homepage, or when I scroll over to my podcast tab on Spotify, it will show me that it's updated instead of having to go and search for it or wait to be updated on social media. Because I do that. I try to make that as quick of an update as possible, but sometimes there's a bit of a lag. No one's perfect, right? So if you are interested in supporting the show and showing that this is something that is beneficial for you, do subscribe to it. And if you know of someone that is like you or like me, or that is interested in politics and current events but just doesn't have the time for it, go ahead and share them this show and send them a link, send them an episode, send them this episode because I think that these are going to be it's going to be important moving forward because people obviously lead very busy lives and sometimes they don't have time to listen to an hour and a half long podcast or a 3 hour long show. This one promises to stay under half an hour. We try to keep it to 20 minutes and if possible 10 to 12 minutes. So trying to understand that many people today lead very busy lives and it's a very fast time to be living in, and this current events show is dedicated to helping Christians stay up to date in a timely fashion. So if you like what you have heard, please do share this show and subscribe to it and like and comment on it. All traffic helps build this conversation and build the Life Given podcast family. Anyway, remember that the life that you have been given and the life that you have received includes every area of life. Your freedom is no exception. God bless.